As of today, I believe you're 37 years old. You're going to be 38 on Wednesday, I believe, right?
Yeah, you know better than I.
Yeah, it's your
August
birthday
9th,
coming up. August 9th, your birthday's coming up. So as a 38-year-old, if you become the president, I mean, that's the youngest president we'll ever have in the history of America. Currently, the president, Biden's 80, President Trump is 77. And what would it mean for your country? What do you think would mean to America for us to have a president that's 38, maybe next year be 39 years old? Why do you think there's that enthusiasm to want to get somebody that age as a president?
So here's what I will say. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president in a major party. Here's what I'll say is going on in the country. I think I understand my generation. I'm a millennial. People younger than me, Gen Z. What's going on? We are hungry for a cause. That's what's going on. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our national history, a moment when the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And that leaves a black hole, a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. It almost doesn't matter what the poison is, actually. And this is where conservatives, even myself at times in the last 3 years, we get too wrapped up in the symptoms. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism. But it's not just politics or culture. Depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. You think it's an accident that we see the rise of these different poisons right at the same time in American history. It is not a coincidence, guys. It is a symptom of a deeper void of purpose and meaning. So, honest to God, Patrick, I do think people are hungry for a different generation of leadership, but to tell you the truth, there are people my age who, you know, maybe less with it than some people who are 80 or 90 years old, who I know who are good for them, sharp as a tack and with it. I don't think that's quite it. It's not just that we need a young person. I think what we need is we need to fill that vacuum by, as I said before, not just running from something, but running to something. The left will give us this vision of race, gender, sexuality, climate. And then the right will just criticize each of those things and say, okay, well, here's what's wrong with that, without offering a vision of our own. And so what I'm saying in this race is I want us talking more about what we stand for. The value of each individual. The value of this thing we call the family. The nation. God. Actually, there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God doesn't fill it. Something else will instead. The same can be said for belief in a nation. We're like a bunch of blind bats, actually. I didn't mean to get too philosophical tonight, but it's the visual that comes to mind for me. We human beings, we're like blind bats. We're lost in a cave. A bat can't see where it is. It sends out sonar signals that bounce back and says, this is where I am. Well, we human beings, we do the same thing. We send out a signal. It bounces off of my family, the two parents who brought me into this world. That's true. That's real. Bounces back. It says, this is where I am. Send out a signal. It bounces off of my belief in God, my conviction in this nation. These things are true. They bounce back. They say, this is where I am. I work hard. You're an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur. We work hard. We create something in the world that is real, that is true. I am proud of that. That is real. That comes back. It says, this is where I am. Well, what happens when those things each disappear? We send out these signals, and then nothing comes back. Right? We're lost in that wilderness. And so I think that's what young people are hungry for. And we've told them for a long time, go to Ben & Jerry's and order a cup of ice cream with some social justice sprinkles on the side and make yourself feel good. And that works for a little bit. But you can't really satisfy a moral hunger with fast food. It works in the short run, but I think right now we're in a place where that effect is fading. I think people are hungry for the real thing, whatever that is. And so I think that's actually what's resonating. It's not my age or anything else, but as a member of my generation, I get it. I was disaffected from politics for a long time. I didn't vote for most of my 20s. I voted back when I was 19 for the Libertarian candidate. I wasn't inspired by the political candidates I saw. I was disaffected myself, so I get it. I understand that. But I think now is our moment to level up and say we're going to fill that void with an actual vision of what it means to be a citizen of this nation. And if we can do a good job, I'm doing my best in this race, if we can do a good job of offering a clear vision for young people, for all people across this country, I think we're going to see a domino effect. I think we're a hair's trigger away from a national revival, even though it might be hard to see today. That's truly where I think we are. And I'm actually genuinely optimistic that we're not a nation in decline. I think we are still, as hard as it might be to believe, a nation in our ascent, actually. In the early stages of our ascent. Maybe, I'm not the only young one, maybe. Maybe our nation is itself a little young, actually. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're really going to be when we grow up. And then it makes sense, because when you go through adolescence, you go through that identity crisis. You go through that self-doubt. That's where we are, but I think we're going to get to our adulthood on the other side of it, and I'm in this to play my small part to help lead us there. So that's kind of how I think about it.
I appreciate that. So let's just say you're on stage, and you remember the moment with President Reagan when he's debating, and he says, "I do not want to make this debate about the lack of experience my opponent possesses," right? Okay, so let's just visualize. President Trump's already announced he's not going to do the first debate, right? He's just not going to do it. He's going to let everybody else. Knowing him, he may. Matter of fact, you think he's going to show up or not?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm cool either way.
So let's just say he doesn't show up, and he's saying everybody competes to be possibly my VP. That's kind of how you put it. But let's just say you're on stage with them, not the first one, second, third one. Say you're on stage. And he looks at the camera and says, "Listen, do you really think America's ready for a 38-year-old young guy, half my age, the amount of experience I've had, the people I've sat down with? This guy's great. He's phenomenal. He can play a role on my cabinet." He's going to say that. "But you are way too young to be the president. Do you think America today prefers somebody in their mid to late 70s or somebody in their late 30s?"
I think the country is ready for a new generation of leadership. I've got fresh legs, right? I'm ready. I'm excited for this. I mean, I hope my best days in life are still yet ahead of me. I mean, for me, November 2024, that's not the destination. That is the start line. The destination of the presidency is January 2033, when I leave office. My older son won't even be in high school yet. I think it might take somebody whose best days are still ahead of him. I hope they are, God willing, to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself as a nation. And that's how I genuinely see it. Do I have the level of experience that President Trump has on foreign policy or on leading the federal government? No, by definition, I've not been in government. But one of the things I might say is, I actually think I am in some ways closer to Trump in 2015 than Trump today is to Trump in 2015, actually. You know, 8 years from now, I might be tired, jaded, cynical, have a few extra pounds, a little gray thrown through my hair if I have any hair left. And, you know, we're human beings, right? You go in to drain the swamp drains part of you. And I bear no illusions that this is going to be some honky-dory job. No, this is going to take something out of me. It would out of every person who's been through it, and I get that. But I guess I'd rather have somebody going in that still has fresh legs, that's going to come out of it not completely drained on the other side, but move to a new phase of my own life as this country moves to the next phase of its national life. And so, are the people ready for a young person? That's not for me to say. My job is to tell you who I am and what I stand for. That's your guys' job to decide.
What do you think?
If that's what you want.
Okay.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.